Hello, my loves. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Destina. This is Spiritually Bougie Astrology, and I'm ticked off. It's the same rant as the last week ahead video, and that is software. I have already recorded this episode a couple of times. Whenever I try to get a hold of the developer, of course, it was just like, you have delete all your cookies, reboot your computer, Control Alt Delete, shake the Etch a Sketch, fan the flames, send the smoke signals. Still super irritated. Moving on. Mercury retrogrades tend to have technology issues. Super fun. That kind of can feed into these things. But really, a lot of the Mercury retrograde energy is going to be very much tied to the re's. Rethinking, refocus, repurpose, revitalize, reconnect, redo certain levels of communication. A lot of re's. There's other aspects in regards to Mercury retrograde, and I always say that we do something in layers. So if there's anything that you're trying to do, anything that you're trying to like work out the kinks, this is kind of that time to work out kinks. That's what's really great about a Mercury retrograde. You take something so far, once you get to that point, you're like, okay, I know I can't really go any further without testing out what I've done. The retrograde timeline is the test. It's going back over certain areas of the sky, going back over certain areas of your coding, you're developing, you're looking for the areas of improvement, and then testing those out. Once we get the kinks worked out during that direct phase, that's when we get the kinks worked out, we get everything lined out, and we start to work towards actually launching something and taking something forward and getting something going, getting something moving in a lot of different ways. We do a lot of things in layers. Now, this is Mercury. There is that other very obvious aspect, and that is going to be travel. There can be issues with vehicles, issues with logistics, issues with commerce that can come through with the Mercury retrograde. Now, this Mercury retrograde it started its shadow period, conjunct the North Node, the head of the dragon, devouring things, and it will start its actual turn at retrograde within 2 degrees of Uranus. So we're going to have something in regards to technology that we almost get going, we almost get to a certain level, we almost get to a certain, innovative point, and we just can't. We have to go back over something. It can't hit. And we end up going back over the code. We end up going back through the plans, going back through the frame, whatever we're having to work through. Get it fixed so we can finally come forward. Now, this Mercury retrograde is on top of an eclipse. And for a lot of people, the thinking, the way that we refocus something that opens up the next layer of communication, that rethinking energy is going to start to bring certain people back. It's either going to bring people back into our lives, it's going to bring us back into other people's lives, or it's going to push for us to revisit certain places, not just topics and conversations of revisiting, but literally it'll push us into certain places. We'll go back home. We'll go into another area. We'll end up going back to some place that we haven't visited in a long time, but it's not completely unfamiliar. It might have changed or transformed since then, but not completely unfamiliar. That's going to be a big part of this upcoming energy. And I also feel like part of this Mercury retrograde is going to also feed into some of the things that's going to occur in that upcoming Venus retrograde that's going to come up this summer. But we're only going to get like previews, like inklings, and I'll cover that more at the end of this video. Now, when it comes to the eclipse levels of the energy, I'm not going to go over all of the eclipses in this video. This, I want to stick closer to Mercury and specific dates tied to the Mercury retrograde. But understand that I can't leave out the eclipses. I can't. Parts of what's going on in eclipse season is going to really feed through this Mercury retrograde. Part of the refocusing and reimagining and revitalization that's going to happen in this Mercury retrograde is happening also because it's eclipse season, and I can't deter that. But I want to put more focus on this video on Mercury, more so than anything else. So, speaking of Mercury, he's already in shadow as of this week. In previous videos, I have already ranted about what's starting to come through. Mercury entered Taurus on April 3rd. Mercury was conjunct the North Node during the Libra side quest full moon. I'm calling it a side quest. And that occurred on the 5th. Within 36 hours of the full moon, here we have Mercury, the very early mornings of April 7th, entering shadow. Now, any of the topics that have occurred since April 3rd are going to be where we're going to come back to. But this is truly the degree minute of shadow. This is officially where it happens. Now, I want you all to notice a couple things. One, when Mercury enters shadow, it is leaving a sextile from Saturn and entering a sextile to Mars. Saturn and Mars just wrapped up their third trine. The first two occurred during that Mars retrograde when those two planets were still going between Aquarius and Gemini. But now Saturn is in Pisces and Mars is in Cancer. We're doing a lot of emotional shifts with the two malefics where they're at. And who's in the middle of those two malefics? Mercury. Very close to the North Node, unable to feel like he can move forward in certain thoughts, feeling drawn towards, I need to have this conversation. I need to talk to this person. I need to go to this place. Feeling very much pulled that we need to do something. However, being stuck in between the two malefics, he ain't moving. He ain't going. He isn't getting anything done. He isn't having those conversations. He needs to, but he's not because he feels so stuck. Therefore, what has to happen is necessary, constructive ripples, disruption, a little bit of chaos, a little bit of frustrations. We've already been dealing with that. That's not even a joke. That's why I wanted to do this video into the shadow, not before the shadow, because some people won't necessarily put two and two together. But understand, whatever conversations, whatever decisions, whatever topics were a part of April 3rd through April 7th, we're going to come back to them in May for more than one reason. This little trifecta energy of Saturn, Mars, and Mercury, that's one of them. Another quick little layer, it's not huge, it's just quick. Neptune and Venus. During that Libra full moon, Venus was at 24 degrees. By the time we get to Mercury in shadow, Venus is at 25. Okay? Just put a little virtual pin in this mark, in this date, in this mark, in these placements of transit, because we're going to come back to them. Okay? Okay. So let's fast forward this. Let's get through the week. Let's get up here to that eclipse that's going to happen on the 19th. I gotta back this up to make this work right. Come on, baby. Move it. There we go. So, in the very, very late hours, April 19th, we're going to have a new moon eclipse in Aries. It's our second new moon in Aries. The first one happened back at 0 degrees at the very beginning of Aries season. Now we're at the end of Aries season and we're having this eclipse. It's an out of sign eclipse. Why? Because anytime you have a moon cycle within 15 degrees of the node, you have an eclipse. Here's the North Node, less than 5 degrees away, we have a new moon in Aries. So we're having an out of sign eclipse. When we get to the end of May and at the end of Taurus season, when we have that new moon, it's going to be over here at the later degrees, and it's going to be more than 15 degrees away from the node. So therefore, it's going to be a regular new moon. It's not going to be an eclipse. So this is a new moon in Aries. It's an eclipse in Aries. Who rules Aries? Mars. What is Mars doing? Raking its claws through all of the surface level emotions that's Cancer related. Now, it's not necessarily the eclipse I want to get into. It's the fact that the ruler of this eclipse, Mars, right here, is re-entering the sextile from Mercury. Mercury is still direct right now. However, Mercury is flustered. Mercury feels stuck. Mercury is just spinning in place going, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I'm tired of waiting. I'm getting annoyed. I'm getting frustrated. Mercury's spinning. Now, let's talk about what happens over the next 36 hours. No, let's do that. Go back to hour. I'm bumping this by hour for the people to get salty with me when I do it. But I like things to be somewhat exact whenever we talk about them. Here we go. This is 2:53 a.m. April 21st. Here's the moon coming into a conjunction with Mercury. If I bump this another hour and I go from 2:53 to 3:53, right after the moon leaves its conjunction from Mercury, Mercury turns retrograde. Now, the moon is our emotions, and it's eclipse season. Mercury is our logical brain, and this is happening in the middle of the night. Now, for some people, this is going to be that overnight hour, that right person comes in, that right conversation happens, and immediately just kind of like starts to make you rethink how you do things. Like, if you would put yourself in other people's shoes, maybe you would realize that they're not trying to be pissy with you. It's because they're hurt. That's why they're in the emergency room. Maybe they're not trying to be pissy with you. Maybe it's the fact that you're being pissy with other people and you haven't realized like that customer service smile when people are coming in at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. Some people have to work early mornings. And you get that little flip, that little switch. They're just like, oh. And there's kind of a perspective change. Now, for those of us that sleep at night, we're going to bed the night before, overthinking, as always. And it's like the emotional coming together with the moon makes us wake up the next morning going, you know what? Screw it. I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of trying to figure this out. I'm just going to do my own thing. Now, we don't necessarily immediately come up with telling somebody we're going to do our own thing, but we kind of decide it. Where are we more willing to tell somebody? Oh, in the days following. Right around here. This is 3:53 a.m. April 24th. The later part of the 23rd is more of where part of this energy is going to come together. But I want you guys to take a look at something. So before, when Mercury and Mars were in a sextile back at the beginning of April, Mercury was direct, Mars was direct. For us to move forward, we have to get certain things going. I have to have certain things understood. Those understandings have not occurred. So Mercury felt stuck. Mercury couldn't get anything going. Mercury couldn't go any further. Now Mercury wants to turn around and go back over some things and just not work with Mars, not agree with Mars. So how's a couple ways that this can come through? I know I said I would go with you on this trip, but I didn't expect to not get my vacation approved at work. I didn't expect to get sick. There was something else that came up and I can't commit now. I can't go. And that's going to be a real mundane way to do things. Oh, I know I told you that you could take off this week, but 3 people have quit and I absolutely need coverage until I can get somebody hired. Can you reschedule your trip? Pending everybody's nice about things. That kind of goes into this. We had a plan, we had a thought, we had an idea, we had a certain process, and we realized it's not going to work and we have to go back over something. We have to change it up a little bit. Part of that new direction. Now, let me add a layer to this. Dusty and her layers. Dusty likes layers. Okay. There is what is known as kind of like secret transits, and this would be known as an antisha or a contrantisha, the ones that I'm going to go over. I specifically want to go over an antisha. And if I was to fold the chart at the solstice line, that would be the line between Sagittarius and Capricorn, Gemini and Cancer, right here. If I was to fold the chart right there, in the later parts of the 23rd, Venus and Mars, their numbers numerically will equal 30 degrees. There is an area here where we need to have an understanding that we need to come together. That's what that Antisha is meant to be. Like, we have different levels of perception, but we can figure things out. But Venus is in mutual reception with Mercury, and Mercury is going backwards. So part of this energy is not going to just be seeing eye to eye with somebody, but it's putting perspective in play for them. And that's going to be, for a lot of people, it's going to be like, look, I'm in this relationship, you're in this relationship. I'm ready to go to the next level. I'm ready to commit. I'm ready to do these things, but you can't figure out what dog food to buy. Like, I don't know what to do with you. So we need to take a break. I need to take a step back. You need to take a step back. I need to just focus on what I need to do, focus on my work, focus on where I'm at. You need to figure out whatever you need to figure out. And we can have a different conversation later. Now, that later won't be for everybody. For a lot of people, it will be. You'll end up having another conversation. You'll come back to something later on. For others, it's going to be fully coming to terms with, you and I are never going to see eye to eye. This is never going to work. And there will be those clear present breaks that can occur right here. They don't have to be disrespectful. You can literally say, I can just tell that you and I are never going to be able to be anything more than friends. That's the best way for us to move forward. And some of this can be very strategic. For others, the butt hurt will be quite real and they won't be able to handle it quite as well. And they're going to get into a very sulky stage. How do I know that? Because immediately after this Antisha sextile hot mess that we're talking about, what's Mars going to do? Enter a square from Chiron. Let's talk about those wounds, baby. Let's talk about those surface wounds. Let's talk about that areas of healing. That's going to follow this Antisha energy. So I know a lot of people are going to go through, I'm here, you're there. We've got to figure out this bridge, or we need to continue walking on the land directions that we can actually have. And obviously we don't need to worry about a bridge anymore. That's going to be a part of this. There's going to be some wounds and there's going to be some healing in that rethinking, refocus, reimagining, and different levels of communication. Now, that's the 24th. That's the 23rd going into the 24th. This kind of feeds into some of that heart opening energy. I started to talk about this in the last week ahead episode. The weekend of the 13th, 14th, 15th. That was kind of a weekend that started to do some deep levels of emotional. This is another level of that emotional heart opening energy. So just be aware of that, because that's kind of parts of the themes that are going to go into this eclipse season, not just the Mercury retrograde. Okay, let's fast forward this to the 1st. What happens on the 1st? We get a Cazimi. Now, a Cazimi can really only happen with 2 planets, Mercury and Venus. Why? Because they're the only 2 planets between the Earth and the Sun. Every other one, it's a conjunction. These 2 get Cazimis. In this case, Mercury is retrograde. Therefore, Mercury is actually closer to the Earth. So we have the Sun, Mercury coming back into alignment, and then the Earth. So in this area, we get some level of clarity. As Mercury comes into the heart of the Sun, we get clarity. But this isn't immediate clarity. As much as I want it to be immediate, for some people, an immediate area will become clear, but not crystal clear, not everything. Some of this is going to take a few days. And that clarity is going to also come with a bit of a shedding, a release and a let go. But here's May the 1st. Here's Mercury and the Sun coming into conjunction. Here is the Cazimi. We're getting clarity on how we can continue backwards, on how we continue this motion, on how we get something accomplished. Now, there is another layer. Of course, Dusty likes layers. Where is Mercury in Venus's sign? Where is Venus in Mercury's sign? Okay. It's eclipse season. Where's the moon? Oh, it's also in Mercury's sign. Isn't that interesting? 2 + 2 is 4. Now let's talk about what the moon is going to do on this day. The moon is going to enter a square from Venus and then in opposition to Neptune. I have a desire for something that I want to accomplish. Can you help me? I don't know. The moon hits that opposition to Neptune. It's like, oh, well, there's more roadblocks. There's more things that must be understood. There are more things that we must work through and get different understandings of. The moon making this opposition to Neptune tells me that there is an area that requires more effort for clarity to follow. The clarity is going to follow as Venus continues that square to Neptune. Now, it's not going to be immediate clarity. It's going to take a few days. In fact, that foggy, confusing, I don't know how we're going to get through this, I don't know, that's going to still be there for a few days because Venus will be in that square. But as Venus continues that square, she's starting another energy. And now I'm going to take this to the 5th. And where do we get to? Here's the 4th. The the Venus-Neptune square will actually be exact on the 4th. But right after Venus leaves that square to Neptune, she is also within a sextile from Jupiter. And now we get to right around here, right in the middle of the afternoon. I want to say it was like closer to 12:30. Oh, I went 10 minutes. Yeah, that'll work. Close enough for government work. Here is the sun, 14 degrees, 58 minutes. Here's the moon, 14 degrees, 57. I'm off by a minute. Get over it. And where is Venus? Just past that sextile with Jupiter. Why am I bringing that up? Well, first off, let's talk about this eclipse. The rulers, plural, rulers of Scorpio. Modern, Pluto. Traditional, Mars. What has Mars been doing? Scratching all these surface levels of emotions in Cancer. What is Pluto doing? Pluto's now retrograde. I didn't cover this because it didn't really apply to the Mercury retrograde, so to speak. But Pluto's now retrograde, and Pluto's going back over the areas of the sky. Recent transformations, recent upgrades, recent changes, and seeing them from a new light, seeing new benefits, seeing certain things take shape and take hold. That's Pluto stuff. All well and good. Now, let's look at Mars. In this transit, Mars is not being activated. This video is not about Mars, though. This video is about Mercury. Mercury is also not really being activated right now. He will be very, very shortly, but not right now. However, let's talk about what's going on in Mercury's sign. Venus is in Gemini. What occurred during that T-square energy? Venus started her square to Neptune. At this point, Venus is breaking away from her square to Neptune. By the time we get to the eclipse, the eclipse, blah, 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 the eclipse, we'll have gotten a whole different understanding of something. We will have cut through certain amounts of fog. We will have started to touched on areas that were once misunderstood, not easily understood, not easily able to be touched or broken through. We're going to see something more solid because we have this energy between Jupiter and Venus. Now, I like this because I also know that Venus and Jupiter are going to have a lot of connections through the Venus retrograde. So this tells me that whatever we shed in this full moon eclipse, because this is what this one is, full moons are usually like endings, letting something go, leveling something up. Even to level something up, we have to let a past way go. We tend to forget that even though we've leveled up from something, we've still had to let something go. Whatever we are shedding, whatever we are transforming, whatever we are working through eclipse season, there is a benefit. And that benefit is being spoken between Jupiter and Venus. Let Venus get through her square from Neptune, and that benefit is going to be huge. And that actually all occurs on the day of the full moon eclipse in Scorpio. Now, I'm not putting heavy emphasis on the eclipse. I'm just saying, like, we will be working through something, and Mercury and Mars's energy here is very much at hand, but it's at hand through the other players, through the other ones involved. Now, fast forward this just a few days, and we're going to get to the 7th. On the 7th, Venus is going to enter Cancer. When Venus enters Cancer, Venus ends mutual reception with Mercury. I'm making fun of myself, by the way. At that same time, Mercury is ending. He's within a week of ending the retrograde. And what is Mercury doing? Re-entering the sextile from Saturn. The sextile that occurred back during the Libra full moon. Oh, wait, aren't we going to start coming back to the Libra full moon stuff? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Here's the start of that. Here's the start of that. Mercury will start to slow down. It won't turn direct for another week. But in this slowdown, it's coming back towards Saturn. It's coming back to a decision maker, coming back to an authority figure, going back to an adultier adult. Somebody that has more life experience, a coach, a teacher, medical professionals, your spiritual coaches, not just like the sports coaches, but these people that we get insights from. We start to come back to those conversations, and we have those more prolonged, deeper, knowledge-based conversations, taking in more information from Saturn as Mercury is slowing down in that sextile to Saturn. Now, that's going to get way more exact around the 9th. So here we are. Mercury is at 6 degrees, 56 minutes, coming back towards Saturn, who is about to be at 6 degrees. We're just a few hours off from that. Humor me. And Mercury is getting the lessons. Mercury's getting perspective, getting information, getting the rules, getting the guidelines, getting the plans, getting help, getting aid in some way right here. And it's not an immediate aid. It's not going to be a fast aid. It's going to take quite a few days because Mercury and Saturn are going to be in this sextile for a few days. So let's talk about this. That was the 9th. Here's the 10th. There's the 11th. Here's the 12th. Now, there's another element that starts on the 12th. There's another party involved on the 12th. Well, what's going to happen? Venus, baby. Venus. Remember I said, let's put some virtual pins in certain dates? Here's another one of them pins. Here's this one right here. You go back to the 7th. Mercury was sextiling Mars, sextiling Saturn, and Mars had just left a trine from Saturn. Now we have Mercury going backwards in the sky, going towards Saturn, and Saturn is in this trine to Venus. Look, I know you're at your grandma's house. I know you don't want to talk to me right now, but I at least just want to know that you're okay and you're healthy. So what does he do? He calls grandma. I just want to make sure everything's okay. Yeah, everything's fine. Give her a few days. She'll cool off. That's that kind of energy. It's like we have something coming into play. We have something coming into shape. We have something coming into our benefit, but it's not immediately recognizable. It's going to take us some time. The reason it's going to take us some time is because Mercury is still going in the other direction. Mercury is still going backwards in the sky. Mercury hasn't made the decision to turn around yet. That's going to take a few days. And I do mean just a few days. So let's bump this to the 14th. And now I'm going to bump it by hour because I want to show this more exact. All right. Bumping. Here we go. Here's the moon at 26 degrees and 53 minutes. This is at 9:33 p.m. Central Time. If I bump this 1 hour, here's 10:33. The moon has now made its conjunction and passed Neptune. And what has Mercury done in that hour? It's went direct. So 9:33, Mercury is retrograde. 10:33, Mercury is direct. Right after the moon comes into a conjunction to Neptune, suddenly Mercury flips the script. Mercury stations direct. Imagination, inspiration, spiritual clarity, getting spiritually and emotionally in tune with something right here can happen. There's another reason I'm saying that. Why? Because right as these two are coming into their conjunction, they're also putting a trine onto Mars. Inspiration, wanting spiritual change on an emotional level, wanting something on a deeper emotional level to come to the surface, but not in such a horrific Mars-like way. We need to break through certain levels of confusion. We need something else to come together to allow for the other things to take shape. There'll be a lot of imagination in this energy, but it's not just about imagination. The other thing that's starting to occur, it's not going to be exact here, it's not even going to be exact for quite a while, is the fact that Mars is starting to build into its square to Jupiter. That's going to be really important at the end of eclipse season because this is going to put a lot of other energies at play. But we're not worried about that part right now. Mercury is direct. Mercury will finally start to charge ahead. Part of our ideas, the layers of things that we have been doing will finally start to take their final rounds of shape once Mercury starts to move forward. And we're still in eclipse season right here. The end of eclipse season isn't technically until the new moon in Taurus, and it's between Mercury's turning direct and that new moon, Jupiter's changing signs. And Jupiter is going to go into Taurus. And that's where we're going to be dealing with Jupiter now for the next year and a half. Is Jupiter's energy creating new areas of stability in Taurus. These new areas of stability require clear thought moving forward, unimpeded. What is Mercury doing right here? Re-entering its sextile to Saturn. Not in a negative sense, but more along the lines of, all right, Grandma, you were right. I'm going to go back to work. I'm going to go back home. I'm going to go back and deal with my stuff. I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to take things to the next level. I'm going to go launch this business. I'm going to do certain things. Now, I want to show you one other thing that was going through right around the time that Mercury turned direct. Remember the virtual pin from that April 7th date? There was one other virtual pin that I said we're going to come back to. One other one. And that was Venus and where she was in the sky when the Libra full moon happened. What was Venus doing? Was entering a sextile from Neptune in Taurus. That's where Venus was, between 24 and 25 degrees. This is Mercury, newly direct. And where is the sun? Where is our ego? Finally able to focus on something where Venus previously was. Venus is putting the band-aids on everything that Mars did. Venus is now in the sky, in the area of the sky where Mars was back during that April 7th date. Mercury is back in the sky where he was back on April 7th. And that's even within a 2-degree conjunction of the North Node. The North Node hasn't even hardly moved. It's just kind of gone back and forth all during eclipse season. So we have the North Node very close to the same degree. Mercury exactly in the same degree. The sun, right where Venus was at the start of the Libra full moon. Where is Venus? Where Mars was. Certain areas of disruption, certain areas of chaos, certain things that needed to ripple through to make space for what's about to slide through. Mercury retrograde happens. Things start to slide back into place, slide through. People come back. We reconnect. And now we can finally take new steps forward. New things start to take shape. Now, again, Mercury is trying to re-enter its sextile to Venus, but it's not going to be exact in this area. So there's 2 additional dates that are not immediately recognizable as being tied to this Mercury retrograde, because they're not even going to take shape for a full month. So that tells me that when they take shape, they won't even easily be noticed, but they will have some ties back to this Mercury retrograde. And both of them are a month after this date. So let's talk about that just for a moment. Come on, one day, bump, bump. Let's get to the 17th. Here's the 17th. Here is the new moon in Gemini. And this is when Mercury will finally have its next sextile to Venus. They were close a month earlier when Mercury turned direct, but it won't finally happen until June 17th. And by then, they have both changed signs. Now, where's the other one? Just a few days after this, the third sextile between Mercury and Mars. That's going to take place between June 20th and June 21st. It's all going to kind of come down to the time zones again. Here's Mercury, here's Mars. They won't close out their sextiles until June. So there will be 2 June dates that feed from this Mercury retrograde that won't take place until Venus is in Leo, which is why I was saying before, I said I would come to it at the end of this video. Some of the things about this Mercury retrograde, layered with the eclipse, I'm knocking stuff off my desk now, layered with the eclipse, because I talk with my hands, won't truly fully take shape until we get into this Venus retrograde. And the reason I really said that more than anything is because the next Mercury Venus sextile, the one that closes out their little rift, happens here. It happens once Venus is in Leo. And by the time we get to the Mercury-Mars sextile, now we're talking about Venus entering shadow. Right here. Right here. So just understand some of the things that we're working through over the next month, working towards in general, have a longer standpoint. Some of the things that just occurred that first week of April that we had pop up in the moment, but we're only able to do so much with, we're going to come back to them. And we come back to them in May. Stop. Okay. We're going to come back to them in May. And then we'll take all those into the next level in June. That's what a lot of this is telling me. So when we get to that mid-May range, what we're going to do is the temporary side quest energy and the other things that have come back around, that have come full circle, that have come through, we're going to start to blend them together at the end of eclipse season, at the end of the Mercury retrograde. And that will be a big part of that blending that will start to occur through that Venus retrograde and through the next round of eclipses, because the eclipses later this year, the second half of this year, those eclipses are going to be all Venusian, all Venus ruled. The first eclipses, all Mars ruled. The second eclipses, all Venus ruled. Therefore, these are feeding into one another and they're sliding certain things into place in a certain way. The cuts, the shifting, the pivots, the restructuring of the first part of the year offers benefit at the last half of this year. And I will go over more of those things in the eclipse videos. But understand, more than anything else, this Mercury retrograde is meant to bring certain things back into play, bring certain people back into play, bring us back to certain places in the world so we can be in alignment with what's going to come through next, what comes through in that Venus retrograde and in the Venusian-ruled eclipses later this year. All right, babies. I love and appreciate every single one of you. I really hope this isn't super glitchy. I'm hoping everything goes over well. Hit me up with questions. Hit me up with concerns. I love and appreciate every single one of you again. And I'll talk to you soon. Subscribe.